You ever notice, Sarah said, that nobody ever looks each other in the eye in places like this? Mark shrugged, folding a damp towel. Can't blame him. Ain't nobody proud to be doing laundry at 1:30 in the morning. Sarah took a long drag off her cigarette. This laundromat was so empty that nobody ever complained if you smoked inside of it. She chased it with coffee that tasted like fluorescent lights and loneliness. You ever notice how these washers always sound like they're trying to swallow a heartbeat? Mark looked up from the chipped folding table where he'd been building a tiny pyramid of quarters like a man killing time on death row. That a poet thing or an insomnia thing? Both, she said, pushing a wisp of hair behind her ear, but mostly insomnia. There were 7 machines in the all-night laundromat, the kind wedged between a vape shop and a payday loan that died last winter. Midnight beyond the glass, a light rain clinked against the parking lot like fingernails. Inside, fluorescent buzz, detergent breath. A wandering moth winged itself on the ceiling tile. Sarah's basket was full of black leggings, hoodies, 2 shirts the color of midnight. Mark's load was jeans, work shirts that smelled faintly of roofing tar and last week's rain. You live nearby? He asked, and then held up a hand. Not a line, I swear. 2 blocks over, the place where the busted mailbox. Sarah said, through smoke while wrapping a loose string of a nightgown around her fingers like a curl of hair. Yeah, he said. You know, busted since, I don't know, since there were stamps. Sarah smiled at that. And you? Over by the liquor store on Baker, he said. One of those bachelor caves you can smell from the stairwell. But I keep it tidy, he added quickly. My mother would haunt me if I didn't. Good mothers, she said, watching the wash machine catch slop, catch again. They get into your walls? Yeah, they do, Mark said softly. They didn't talk for a while. The room hummed. Somewhere far away, a siren undulated and then got embarrassed and gave up. Sarah's eyes drifted to the mounted TV over in the corner. It was cycling a news crawl with the sound off. Power grid, solar event, major anomaly, preparedness. The anchor's mouth moved like a puppet on tranquilizers. Mark followed her gaze. They love their fancy words when they mean, we don't know, Mark said. You worried? Sarah asked. I'm a roofer, he said. If it doesn't leak, I don't think about it. If it does, I go get a torch. She tipped her head, approvingly of the simplicity. If the sky leaks, what then? He looked up at the quarters, his little pyramid, precise as a prayer. Then I guess I hold a bucket. The lights flickered once or twice. That's normal, Mark said. Sarah didn't answer. At 12:41, the second bank of washers deepened a note. It wasn't volume, it was a pitch, as if someone had grabbed time by the sleeve and tugged. The fluorescent lights buzzed, turned slow like molasses thick, then normalized, then dragged again. The moth bumped the ceiling in a lazy figure 8. The same loop over and over again. You feel that? Sarah asked. Like an elevator between floors, Mark said. He rubbed his forearm. The hairs were standing up in a neat little army. Static? On the muted TV, the anchor smiled with a $50,000 grin. The crawl said, unpredicted magnetic variations. A photo of the sun looked like a mouth full of neon. Sarah reached into her tote, took out a journal, started writing. Mark asked, "Are you a writer?" Sarah looked up. "How did you know?" she asked. "You said that thing about swallowing a heartbeat. Made you sound like a poet." After a beat, she said, "I do, from time to time, kind of dabble." Another flicker. The room shifted, fractionally right, and then obediently slid back like a drunken cruise ship correcting. Mark stood up. "You want some coffee? I got a thermos. It tastes like burnt tires and childhood camping trips. So perfect." She laughed. "Perfect," she echoed, and took her paper cup. Steam curled up in the fluorescent air. It smelled like the way rain on hot pavement smells in July, when the asphalt exhales all of the arguments it swallowed. "You divorced?" she asked, as if they could slip from small talk now that the room had twitched. He nodded. "Last spring." She said I loved the roof more than home, which, to be fair, the roof never asked me to see someone else. "Sorry," Sarah said, and didn't mean it. "You?" "Engaged once," she said. "We planned a June wedding for 3 years in a row. June kept getting farther and farther away. He kept getting closer and closer to someone else. I didn't know. I started writing poems about doors." "Doors?" "The things you can open, that open you back." They sipped, and the hum purred outside. The rain thickened, like something adjusting a faucet 3 universes over. At 12:53 the TV died. Not an ordinary flicker. Not the little apocalypse you get every time a transformer hiccups in the rain. The picture smeared. The anchor's smile stretched like gum until it was a mouth of light, and then the screen paled to something you couldn't call a color. The crawl froze on "if you experience," and then the sentence forgot what it had been trying to say. The washers did something that Sarah would put in the poem and never read aloud. They sighed. The room's corners pulled outward like 4 people on a bedsheet tug of war. The space between the folding table and the coin charger elongated by 3 inches, then 5, then a foot. The neon open sign beyond the glass swam like a jellyfish. Mark set his thermos down with the seriousness of a man extinguishing a fuse. "We should go," he said. Then, because the world sometimes wants you to laugh, the open sign blinked out and then came back on again. Only just pin. It forgot the O. "Maybe the universe is trying to censor us," Sarah said. "What have you got to be censored for?" Mark asked. "Doors," she said again, softly. "And when I do, they open." The lights pulsed a final time and held, somewhere not in any direction that made sense, a click like a doorknob turning. "Feel that?" Sarah whispered. Mark did. It was like standing on a plywood deck that doesn't creak because it's too new, because the wood is so fresh that you can still smell the trees dreaming of leaves. The floor under them wasn't wrong exactly. It was simply less decided. "We should." The world pivoted. Later they would call it no clipping because everyone on the surviving internet loved that word. It sounded like a cheat code. It sounded like controlled. It wasn't, though. They didn't fall. Falling is for gravity and stories with punchlines. They slid through a membrane as thin as a kiss. The laundromat went flat and then turned inside out. The sound of washers softened into a woolen hum. They stepped forward without moving. The door they hadn't opened them. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Carpet, old as a hotel Bible, and the lemon cleaner that never knew a lemon. The second was the color, that sickly rental color, like the inside of a cheap light bulb. The third was the hum, everywhere, not from a machine or a wall, but from air. They stood in a corridor that turned into a room that turned into another corridor. Fluorescence hummed. Someone new, someone on the edge of dying, each with its own tiny ghost. The carpet was damp underfoot, not wet enough to squish, just humid, with a patience that said, forever. Jesus, Sarah, Mark said, not praying, just using syllables like a rope. Where's the door we came through? She looked behind them. There was a wall. The glass should have been there. No washer sounds, no rain. The open side had become a rectangle, the color you'd get if you splashed sunlight onto a blind painter. Okay, she said, hands on her hip, like a small-town sheriff facing down a tornado. Okay. You know what this is? She almost laughed. You haven't seen the Backrooms? I'm a roofer, he said, as if that explained his un-internet. I know shingles, roofs, flat roofs, the bastard ones they call themselves flat, and flood every November. I know flashing. I don't know this. It's a creepypasta, she said, an internet ghost story. You slip through reality into an endless office, lights that hum, damp carpet, windows. It's a liminal space, turned into hell. Great, Mark said. We brought coffee. They stood there, mug to mug, breathing like people trying not to spook a rattlesnake. The hum held. Do we pick a direction, he asked. Pick any, she said. It'll pretend to be different. They went left because left felt like a sin, and right felt like going home. To nothing. The corridor kinked. It whined into a room identical to the last, then narrowed into a hallway, so tight Mark's shoulder brushed a yellow wall, and then came away powdered with something that wasn't dust, but had the same smell. They passed doorways that opened onto other doorways, each promising a room with exactly enough space for a desk that would never arrive. After 5 minutes, or an hour, the corridor opened on a break room, plastic chairs, a vending machine with no power, a microwave with a digital clock that insisted it was 8 p.m. Sit, Sarah said, and did herself. A laugh came out like a hiccup. You always end up in a break room, real life or the back rooms. Maybe the universe thinks we earned one, Mark said. He placed his thermos on the table and unscrewed the top with the gravitas of an opening a bomb. He poured. Steam rose like a prayer that he knew it wouldn't be answered, but was proud to be said anyhow. He looked up at the fluorescents. If they're humming, there's power. If there's power, there's wiring. If there's wiring, there's a way out, he said. You're trying to logic us home, Sarah scoffed. It's what I've got, he said. She met his eyes. I've got poetry, she said, and doors. Mark smirked, handed her a cup of coffee. Then we're screwed. They drank. Somewhere far away, something clinked, like a file cabinet closing on a case file of a lawsuit against the universe. They walked again, and they talked because, in the silence, the yellow felt like volunteering. The hum took their words and flipped them over and over, like a fish out of water. Do you really write? Mark asked. Really, she said. Don't make any money at it. But I keep a little jar, and every time a poem gets taken somewhere, I put $5 in it. When there's enough, I buy a bus ticket, and then I spend the day at the museum, alone. I like the thresholds, doorways, the moment right before you slip into a painting. You're good at waiting, he said. No, she said, I'm good at wanting. They turned another corner, and the corner kept turning, becoming a ring of hallways that fed itself. On the Seventh passage, a dead moth appeared where there hadn't been one. On the 12th, it wasn't dead anymore. Hey, Mark said softly, watching the moth tremble its dust back into order. You thinking what I'm thinking? That this place breathes, she said. That it's rehearsing life until it gets it right? Yeah, he said, relieved and terrified to be understood. They stopped at a stairwell that went both up and down, but didn't confuse to oriented anywhere. A sign said floor 1 in a font that hadn't ever been fashionable. The stairs were carpeted. The carpet was damp like a tongue. You have a kiss in a stairwell? Sarah asked. Not coy, just curious. The way you ask if someone's ever been to a town you love. High school, he said. Smelled like disinfectant and hormones. This one smells like lemon and regret, she said. The corner of her mouth tilted. She put her palm on the rail as if reading Braille fortunes there. The rules in the Backrooms are soft, so let's make some. Make your own rules? Mark asked. Make our own thresholds, she said. We name things. Things behave. He nodded out slowly. Okay, rule 1. Hold hands, she said. If we're going to be the food, let's at least be a meal. He held out his hand. She took it. It was like plugging into a circuit they'd both suspect, but they never dared to test. The hum acknowledged them. It brightened a fraction, like a cat's eye catching light. Rule 2, he said, throat thick. Talk, she said. Keep making the world with words, or the world makes us out of silence. They descended. The carpet was springy, like a mattress you shouldn't be on. The fluorescence dimmed and then corrected. On the landing between the floor's exits, the sign pointed to a blank wall and looked relieved to be wrong. Rule 3, Mark said. If a door appears, she said, we ask it what it wants from us, not what we want from it. The poet thing, Mark scoffed. That's a survival thing, she said. Doors are mouths. At the bottom of the stairs, a hallway that understood perspective too well, tapered just enough to make them doubt their eyes. On the left, a door handle labeled Supply on the right, and the door labeled Quiet Room ahead, and the door had no label at all, just a rectangle the shape of a pillar wall. Sarah's hand squeezed once. You pick, he said. Quiet, she decided. I'm not in the mood for Supply. He tried the handle. It turned like a wrist. The room beyond was not quiet in any human way. It was soft, the way a snowball is falling when you're inside of a lookout. The fluorescence here buzzed in a lower key, one that makes the chest want to answer. There were 2 chairs and a table and a wall on the clock that said 3:33, no matter what angle you looked at it. It knows, Sarah said. Knows what? Mark asked. Our hour, she said. People like us live at 3:33 a.m. 24/7. They sat. The table wobbled and then decided to be steady. The chairs looked like office chairs, but didn't behave like church pews. Stern, supportive, certain. You would stand a better person. Mark put the thermos down. He didn't trust the room's cups. Tell me a poem, he said. I'll trade you a roofing story. She laughed. That's a bad bargain. I like bad bargains, he said. Gives me somebody to blame. She thought, and then recited from memory in a voice that could have been a lullaby. If you hadn't listened to the words. He exhaled. You wrote that? Last year, she said, about an airport. Turned out to be there before. He told her about a roof over a school gymnasium, how the tar bubbled in July until it looked like it was breathing. You step on it wrong, he said, and your boot sinks in, and you panic because your body remembers tar pits from when you were being hunted by big cats. But if you step in it with force, it moved like you were dancing like a lazy drunk if you don't sink until you glide. Rule 4, she said, dance with the drunk. He smiled at pleasure. The wall opposed it, then wasn't a wall at all. It flexed like a cheek caught by a breeze. A steam ran down it, like a zipper that had forgotten to zip itself. The seam pulsed. The hum lifted into a pitch. 2 notes, too inflated to pretend not to be noticed. Sarah whispered in a dry throat. Mouth, Mark said. Ask it, she reminded, and nodded at the seam. He swallowed. What do you want from us? It answered, not in words, but in warmth. The air thickened. The fluorescence dimmed, blushed, came back shy, then seemed to widen a little, and then swallowed as if the room had taken a deep breath and was waiting to see if they would kiss. Mark, Sarah said, and the way she said it, his name, was the way you say a word you've carried in your pocket all day on a hot day. Yeah? This is what I want to write about, she said. I think I've been practicing for this. He laced her fingers within hers. Then show me. They stood. The seam widened without widening. The room didn't get smaller. It got closer. The hum threaded between their ribs like a clever cat. This is it, he began, and then finished. Sex? Then began. They were human, not only. They moved slow as if the carpet would turn into water if they ran. They stood before the seam. It smelled like lemon cleaner and something like a summer library. Old glue, hands, waiting. Sarah raised her free hand toward it. The wall exhaled against her palm, warm, a degree of past body heat, like a breath held too long, wanting to release. The hum climbed until teeth on a kneading edge, and then set itself 1 note lower, sustained a deck. You could dance on it. Tell me to stop, she said. You tell me to, he said. Neither of us, she said, and then shivered. They pressed their foreheads into the seam. The wall met them gladly, the way a lover opens the last inch, without being asked. Beneath the skin, beneath the gymnasium, there was a soft, not empty, soft like a linen closet that forgot its shelves, and then became a shingle, a patient, fabric. Sarah said, because names are lifeless in the ocean of strange. I'm here, he said. His hands slid into her back. Hers followed his chest. Palm warm, their bodies leaned into each other, the way 2 cities lean into after they've been sharing a river. The seam widened, a whisper, more, and then stopped, as if to say, you don't fall into me, you fall with me. The room's fluorescence became kind of twilight. Their breathing braided. The hum took their rhythm and gave it back. It wasn't obscene. It was chaste. It was necessary. Do you feel it? He began. Yes, she said. And then, more than yes, home. The kind where you leave the light on for yourself. He laughed. surprised at the tenderness of it. You make metaphors out of air. It's all I have, she said, and then softer. It's all this place wants to be named. He kissed her, not because the room asked, because it apocalypsed, required it, but because the thresholds deserved witness. The steam kissed their foreheads back with heat. Their mouths met and memorized it. Their hands wandered respectful, as pilgrims of Hungary. The sensation that arrived wasn't friction, it was permission, like being allowed on a roof you weren't qualified to climb, and finding your balance anyway. What they did there would embarrass no one, and burn beneath any red light. It was detailed as two lives, and as simple as a door opening and not closing. The room held them the way a hallway holds your footsteps when you're the only one awake at 3:33 a.m. Outside the rules of their own world, something changed. Not the hum, it stayed, and not the fluorescence. They kept their patience buzzing, but the pressure, the backrooms, pressed against their bodies, and then withdrew. The way the ocean water does, around your ankles in the tide when you've decided to thrust into the sand. Mark, she said again, and the name hung in the soft air glowing. Here, he said again, and meant it. The seam satisfied ease. The room, pleased, brightened half a shade. They leaned against each other, and the wall, three bodies to a different intent, agreed to be single in a threshold. When the wall finally stepped back, time did, and the clock was forgiven. It resumed gently. The clock still said 3:33 a.m. The damp carpet dried out with losing its dampness. Their hands were still linked. He exhaled, like a man who's put down a heavy object. He began pretending it wasn't heavy. We put the lips in apocalypse, he said, surprised at himself. She laughed and laughed again. The one who sounded like the hallway was discovering its windows. No, now you're the poet. Do you think it will let us leave? He asked. She tilted her head, listening the way you listen for a train you don't want to be late for. I think it lets us choose a door we made. He looked around. The exit sign on the landing in the corridor rotated somehow, in the way a compass needle rotates after a storm, and now pointed toward the unangled rectangle down the hall. The pale they dragged on, it ignored. Ask it, she said. He cleared his throat. What do you want from us now? The rectangle warned. No light, no theatrics, just a certainty that settled into their bones, the way a fragile settles into a good work. Walk together, keep naming. They walked. They hummed. Then, like a patient dog, the rectangle didn't swing open. It unwrinkled beyond it. The sheet of darkness that wasn't empty at all, but crowded with possibilities. Like a cinema just before the movie starts. When everyone holds their breath because the first name on the first frame is the whole contract. You ready? He asked. Ready as a door, she said, smiling. We're already through. They stepped.